Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Kaylee Rutchik, who is an amazing social worker, therapist based in Brooklyn and in private practice. And I wanted to jump on and ask her some questions I gathered from you guys, just about mental health in the sort of new normal that we're all experiencing right now. So Kay, hi.
Yes. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for chatting. Yeah, so people are obviously experiencing a lot of feels right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
And I would
Myself
love,
included.
yeah.
This are not any exception to that. So thank you for giving me a reason to get dressed and do my hair today, because that's a first in a really long time. And I have to say, even step one, that feels really good for my mental health. So
Totally. Okay, so can we chat a little bit about that? Because I think people are definitely, as I'm sure you're hearing every minute of every day, experiencing like insane levels of anxiety, depression, mood swings too.
yeah.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about like the sort of all the things that you're seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one part of it is a need for control, right? So the feeling really, it's really difficult to not know, right? And you and I personally have talked about how like, oh, is this another week, another 2 weeks? And where the mind typically goes when that kind of stuff happens, when we don't know, is it catastrophizes, which means it goes to the worst case situation, the worst scenario in your head. So I'm going to get sick. We're all going to die. My parents are going to get sick, and they're going to. What if they don't get better? What if there's no hospital bed, right? All of these kind of scary ruminations that happen can throw us into a tailspin. And so it's not to say that those thoughts are wrong or that we can control them, because the truth is we really can't, right? They're very natural, very normal reactions to what's going on. We actually are living in a crazy world right now. So in those moments when you're like, am I crazy? It's almost really important to remind yourself like, no, actually the world is crazy right now. And I am having a very natural, normal reaction and response to something that is wild, unprecedented, and something that we've never seen or dealt with before. So it naturally brings up all of those unknowns and those fears. So some of the things that we could do to challenge those thoughts are to kind of, I guess one is to name them and recognize like, okay, that's what I'm thinking about. How am I feeling? Noticing like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really anxious. I notice my heart is racing. What's happening in your body? Okay, my jaw is clenched and my palms are sweaty. What do I do? And then the next kind of step from there is to ask yourself like, okay, what evidence do I have that everyone I know and love is going to get sick and die? Right? Like, let's say that's the crazy thought. You say, okay, well, you know what, there is a pandemic happening. So that's not the most irrational, crazy thought that we've ever had, but it's also not the full context. So right after we kind of do that, we need to come in with some evidence that refutes that thought, right? That says that maybe that thought is not really the full picture. The truth is, okay, let's say for you and me, the truth is I'm a pretty healthy person in my 30s. I don't have those comorbidities. I'm socially isolating. I'm washing my hands. I'm cleaning surfaces. I'm doing all the things I need to. Okay, so that science says that those are the things that are going to help. That's not opinion. That's not judgment. That's actual science. So we can lay our hat on that and say, okay, so from that, what's a more reasonable, a little bit more rational response that I can kind of say back to myself when I start to ruminate? What might be an example, Car? Like what might you be able to say to those like kind of scary thoughts?
Like, here are the things that you can control and what you're proactively doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also like then actually doing it. So like, here are the things I can control. Maybe, okay, so maybe I can make an action plan for myself. If I was to get sick, I would quarantine myself in my parents' basement. I would ask my neighbor to get me groceries. I would, make a daily Zoom FaceTime call with my friends and family so I didn't feel so alone. Like, so you can say to yourself, the reality is I'm doing everything I can. I'm controlling as much as I can as much as it's in my control. And the third part is actually taking action and making plans. So, and then communicating them, like saying like, hey guys, this is my plan. So like Cara, with you and your family, like, okay, if I was to get sick, this is what I would do. If mom was to get sick, this is what we would do. And sometimes by sharing the plan and feeling not alone with it, that in itself can make you feel like, okay, we're okay.
That's interesting. We've actually done that about my parents too, between my siblings and I, of just in case, sort of, how can we make sure that everyone's taken care of? So, and it does make you feel more in control. And like on that note too, I guess to weave in a little bit of nutrition too, and finding people are using food in a lot of different ways right now, positively or negatively, but food is something that it is within your control every single day. And I think it can actually be a really empowering thing if we use it correctly too.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that, about how to use it correctly, and when is it okay and when is it not okay. And, all of those things kind of tie into your mental health and well-being. You're right. Like, where do we turn to when we're feeling stressed? And food is definitely a huge part.
Well, I would love to then jump into some like other coping skills that you might have, because I think people are turning a lot to food and a lot to alcohol. Like the memes I'm seeing on alcohol right now are like actually painful to me. Like we have like a lot of addiction in our family and stuff, and it's just like normalizing it in a way that's like having a glass of wine for breakfast, which I know might be funny to a lot of people, but for a lot of people it's really dangerous, and we're all super isolated and holed up right now, and a glass of wine is like probably the highlight of my day right now, but also just think like the normalization of it. So do you have some other recommendations for like coping?
Totally. Yeah. First of all, I feel you. I think it's strange. And I don't know if this is true, but a friend told me yesterday that liquor stores are remaining open because they're considered essential.
That's true here. Yeah.
And I was like totally taken aback by that and floored. So yeah, it makes sense. Like when you hear this, you see it, that everyone's sort of turning to booze, and it's not what I would suggest. It is a depressant. So it actually, like, if you do it in excess, is not going to necessarily make you feel better. You'll probably have a bad night's sleep and wake up hangover. So some other options, maybe some things that, I think there's the typical ones that we all know, like get outside, take a breath of fresh air, exercise, even if you're doing those home videos.
On that note, actually doing it too, because I think we talk a lot about like getting outside, but like get outside for 15 minutes and like sit in the sun, even if it's cold, bundle up and like
even if it's for 5 minutes. And so I was feeling anxious right before this call. I'm going through my own waves and roller coaster of it. And I did the Peloton app. I did like a 5-minute core stretch, and I was like, and sometimes changing your body chemistry can be everything, right? So, do something intensely for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, hold ice cubes in your hand, for a few, because it tips it, or even putting your head into like a bucket of ice water.
Wow, these are new. I've never heard of that before. I love that though.
Yeah.
Changing, chemistry, I guess, as you would say.
Yeah, there's a therapy model called dialectical behavioral therapy, and they call it tipping the scales. And it's all about, changing your body temperature, changing the chemistry of your body to make your emotions kind of calm down. And so outside of those things, other kind of like quirky ones that I've noticed I've been turning to, and some other people have been doing, are like family freeze dance parties. If you're with people, kind of cuts the tension. I also happen to have 2 kids, so that kind of lends itself to that. And my dad and I have been keeping a running online journal. So we email each other every day with like a little short story, and we called it the little things. He doesn't watch Instagram, so I'm not worried about him being like, I can't believe you told everybody about it.
But that's so sweet. But there are like a lot of different ways to, I think, be dealing with what's going on, even doing like art, or like a journal. I just pulled out my journal. I've been so resistant to journaling right now because it's like making it real. And just this morning was the very first time I was like able to, because I'm doing a sort of like journaling challenge for the month. So it's just like, also I think there's a lot available. There's a lot of resources available, especially for free or for pretty inexpensive right now.
Yeah, there's a ton. And I feel like even I've noticed my brother-in-law, he's music sharing with people and saying like what music's helping you get through the day. And, you know, I heard some of the questions that you got, and one of them was about like, what do I do to create some distance from people who I'm living with, if you're living with people and feeling cooped up. And one of the things I've noticed, because I happen to be in a house that's got a lot of people, and I was kind of doing my own social experiment to see what are people doing to survive here. And, you know, one person is taking all of her business calls outside and on walks. So she just walks around for an hour and a half taking all of her business calls. And it's like such a great way for her to like get away, have her own space, get into her body, be outside, get ish done. But it's a really like, I think it's really important that everyone's extremely compassionate with themselves right now. And that even includes like not overdoing it with the resources. So like you said, there's so much going on right now. Like I feel like my inbox is filled with free classes from, you know, the gym, free bar class, free this class, free children's class, free like live safari from the San Diego Zoo. And you're like, oh great, we have to do all of these. And I think also letting yourself off the hook a bit is important, of those moments that if you have kids, it's okay if you can't homeschool constantly all day, every day, perfectly. Like it's okay if this is not the time that you're going to lose 10 pounds or start that podcast. I was like reading this meme about that, and I was like, yes, this does not have to be like, we're in a pandemic. It doesn't, you know, have to be this moment where you are perfection.
Kind of like total productivity either. Like we all need to let ourselves take a beat, take a deep breath, and experience this too. Because I've been reading too, and I think we talked about an article that referred to this as grief, but also that this is like a live trauma that we're all going through. In fact, it's like a slow trauma, a slow and extended trauma.
Yeah.
Which I helps me a lot.
It is. We're living it moment to moment. And I think that's also why the emotions can be such a roller coaster. Because one minute you recognize and realize what's going on, like you watch the news. We should all be kind of monitoring how much we allow ourselves to watch the news also. But, you know, you see it and it's normal. It's a normal reaction to feel the trauma. Yeah. And then you touch out of it and suddenly you're just making yourself a salad for lunch and you're like, oh, like it's nice out today. You know, like you forget.
I have moments of normalcy, and this was a question we were asked also. I have moments of normalcy where I forget what's going on in the world, and someone asked, should I be concerned that I'm not completely filled with anxiety and fear? And this person specifically is like in the news world, and I think functions at a high level of stress often. Right. But I thought that was really interesting because it's kind of relatable. I think at first it was like total meltdown, and now that we've sort of regrounded. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a couple of different things. One is that, no, you don't need to send yourself into a frenzy just to match everybody who's around you if other people are more anxious than you are. It's great. It's a wonderful thing to not feel this sense of anxiety or dread. The part that struck me a little bit was, are they asking, is it possible I'm in denial? Like, is it possible I'm numbing myself from what's actually happening? And I think one way of exploring that is to sit with yourself for a little bit, right? Because sometimes the reason why we deny that something's going on is because we're afraid to feel it. So like with grief, right? If we are too afraid to be, well, I guess with this situation, if we're too afraid to be anxious, because maybe what if it takes over me? What if I actually feel my anxiety, then I'll never get out of it, or I'll just be hyper alert all day long, and it'll spiral and it'll get worse, and I won't be able to do my job or get up and get dressed in the morning. So and there's also a possibility that you're just not feeling anxious right now, and that's awesome. Yeah. So I think one of the ways that I, like as a yoga therapist, that I find really helpful to help people kind of dive in and realize what is actually going on, is to go into a room, maybe a closet, shut the door. It should be pretty dark. Close your eyes. And I say closet just because maybe that's the only real privacy you might get.
I love that.
Place a hand on your heart or your belly or both, and close your eyes. Take a breath in through your nose. Pause at the top of the breath, and then exhale, sigh out of your mouth. And do that a couple of times. And exhale. And then sit with yourself for a few moments and ask yourself, what's happening now? And in those moments, like, notice what comes up. Notice if your thoughts start to take over and say, oh, my to-do list and my grocery list and whatever else. And if that happens, just notice it and say, okay, that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm going to let that go for a moment. And then notice, like, what does my body say? Okay, I notice I'm tight in my chest. Okay, I'm just going to be with that for a minute. And just be with it. Like you said before, the difference between productivity and being with something. This is the idea of like how to actually be with feelings. I think people ask me that a lot. Like, how do I just be with it? And I don't want to be with it. And you're like, yeah, I know. That's why we all do a lot of things to avoid this.
Kaylee and I've been talking a lot about.
So be with it. Ask yourself what's happening.
Love it. I was just going to say that we've been talking a lot about distractions in our own life and like avoidance sort of via distraction, whether it's relationships or different dynamics or work stuff. I think there is just like, it's possible to fill all the feels with a lot of noise right now. I want to just jump back to anxiety for a second, because we had a couple of questions really on anxiety. Should I, obviously without knowing this person, it's not going to be easy to give an answer, but should I go back on medication for anxiety or situational anxiety right now? Like, coping mechanisms for that, and how do I know when it's time to go on medication? I mean, I think it's like, if there's ever a time to be prescribed anything, it's now.
Yeah, I do think that benzos, like, and all of our anti-anxiety medications are going to be more heavily used right now, and that's just a reality, and that's okay, right? That is something that it's personal. You have to talk to your doctor. You have to kind of consult with somebody before just going back on medication. So I wouldn't make that decision totally on your own. I would reach out to your psychiatrist or whoever's prescribing it to you and talk a little bit about your symptoms and what have been going on. Also, just as a reminder, like, we do not have to necessarily pathologize this, meaning we don't have to say that something is wrong with me right now, and that's why I'm taking anti-anxiety meds. No, the world is not right now. It's for the first time ever in my career, it actually is everything else. Like, normally the world has gone crazy and we are responding in kind. Yeah. Rather than, normally it's like you feel like, oh, the person is going through their own real intense anxiety that maybe is not as necessary. No, I think our bodies go into an anxious state for a reason, to keep us protected and feeling safe. And given what we're going through, it's very normal. In terms of like some things you can do if you're not going to use medication or in conjunction with meds, you can do some grounding techniques. So one thing is, you can, when you start to feel kind of panicky, look around the room. I want you to name everything that you see that starts with the letter A. So I'm looking around actually, how about you do it, Kara? Everything that you see that starts with an A.
Literally nothing. Aesop soap.
And if there's nothing,
a soap brand.
Yes.
And I don't have any apples, but they would count.
Okay. So then you would go to B.
Oh, I love this. And books and bottles of wine. And yes, I love this. Okay, this is helpful.
Yeah, perfect. So, and it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 5 or 0 of something. The idea here is just to reground yourself in your setting. And so that's a way of signaling to your mind and your body that you are safe. This is where I am. Because in my head, I was dying. right? Or I was in a hospital bed, I was on a gurney somewhere. No, okay, wait, let's remind ourselves. So I am here. So I'm looking and I'm listing everything that starts with A or B or C, and I'm just regrounding myself and my body back into my place. It's a mindfulness exercise that actually really does help. If that doesn't strike your fancy, you can do any colors you see, everything that's red, everything that's green. Or you could do like, I'm going to name, let's say you love baseball. I'm going to name every Yankee player there is, or every player on the Rockies. Like, I think that's Denver, right? I don't know.
You're blind when it comes to sports. So
yeah.
just like getting really specifics to something that feels safe for you.
And that's in your current environment.
Oh.
And
that's a great point.
So you are like, I am here, right? It's this reminder, I am here. And another nice kind of quick strategy and skill when you're feeling situational anxiety is to do a both and. So the idea that two things that are opposite could be true. So I am terrified of coronavirus, and I'm also loving being in my pajamas and working from home with my dog in my lap.
Wow.
These are both true.
Wow. That's so,
right, so
and I think that there's also like been a lot of, for me personally, there's been like some guilt over feeling okay about things, like, because I feel safe and this isn't that different from my normal work life. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, there's just been some weird feelings of like, doesn't feel right to feel good right now, you know, like to have any fun.
Yeah. And I think it's good to just recognize it, like, oh, I'm feeling guilty about this, and then think about what would your best friend say? What would I say to you?
Of course, you're like,
I'm so happy you're having fun. So having levity. Thank God for a little bit like uplift.
Yeah. That's
great. Oh wait, sorry, you froze.
Okay, so wait, no, so did you. So will you say that last little bit again?
That it's really good to have some levity. That it's really good to like feel uplifted, and it's okay to enjoy yourself, right? And we don't have to just attach ourselves to the negative, scary things. That it's like, you're like, oh, I'm kind of enjoying this. Like and introverts like are rejoicing, right? In for different periods of time where they're like, oh, like this maybe, yes, this is very scary and I'm terrified. And I'm really enjoying being home with my partner right now. I love to like get to snuggle up with my girlfriend, and, you know, we're side by side on our laptops or whatever it is. That's cool. Like give yourself some time to enjoy that, because that's important too.
Yeah. So someone asked about like stress manifesting itself in different ways. So like she's talking about specifically with physical pain, which I thought was interesting. But what do you see in terms of like stress manifestation in different ways than I mean, I think the tools that you've already given are super relevant for that. But is there anything that like, when is it a really big red flag of like, you should talk to someone?
I think, I mean, maybe my bar is pretty low for that stuff, but like, I think that if you are losing sleep, if you notice that your eating habits have really drastically changed, if you notice that you're like snapping at people, if you notice physical pain, you know, like stress is manifesting in like, you know, a tight back or low back pain, jaw tension, you know, like kind of TMJ stuff. Any of that, I think you should talk to someone. I think everybody should talk to someone. Honestly, I know that I'm a therapist, but so I'm biased, but I think the truth is that stress does take a toll on you, and having some neutral person to talk about what is stressing you out, just to vent it out, is so critical. And even if you don't want to talk to a therapist, then you should maybe really think about calling your friend or calling a family member. I think the biggest thing that happens with stress is two things. One is that it eats away at you slowly, And so you kind of wait too long until you get help, right? You get to the point where you have bags under your eyes because you haven't slept in days and you're not eating or you're overeating or, whatever it is. And you could have gotten help earlier. So if you notice those early signs, if it's one night of sleep that's gone, like already start to plan in your head about what you might want to do. And the second thing is that stress compounds. So, and makes you trigger happy. So if you're stressed out, you're not only is it going to come out in all these other ways, but it's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact the way you work. And it builds on itself, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, little stressors throughout the day, like a roommate who doesn't change the toilet paper thing roll, or someone who doesn't help clean up after dinner, like they're little annoyances that over time actually grate on you in this like bigger way until you kind of explode at one point. So try to notice those little things before they become volcanic.
Okay, great. And do you have some advice on where to find a therapist right now? Like, so you're just to be clear, Kaylee is still on maternity leave. So unfortunately,
yeah,
you could get on her wait list, and you should. But for right now, if someone needs someone.
Yeah. So Psychology Today is a very legitimate platform where therapists kind of list what they do and their background, how much they charge, all that stuff. I think that's an excellent place to start. The place, I have a private practice, and I also work for a group private practice that is still taking clients called Mind Body 7. So they're in Brooklyn, but they are doing telehealth. And I would say if you're looking for someone who is definitely on your insurance, like takes insurance, it sounds kind of like lame, but I would call the back of your insurance card and ask for a list of therapists right now, because, not everybody is so affordable. And even doing teletherapy, I know that many therapists are providing sliding fee scales right now. But I also know that unemployment rates are really high. People's budgets are tight. And so if you can find somebody who's in network and that's best for you right now, then that actually really is a great resource to just call your insurance company back of the card. And it's called behavioral health, just so people know.
So what about just like learning to be more patient with new roommates, AKA parents, perhaps, in case your living situation also may have changed. I know we covered that earlier, but like from a patient's perspective, I think a lot of people are with kids, with significant others, like it's just a different dynamic.
Yeah. So I think kind of touching back on some of the things that we already talked about, but to add to them, like really carving out space for yourself is critical. So let's say you and your partner are living with in-laws. I think that was one of the questions, or your parents. First is it's important to lean on the partner, right? So I think I would say to the person like I need some time. Another thing is to use I language. And I language means instead of saying like looking at your parents or your roommate and saying, you're driving me nuts. Like I can't, get me out of here. That when we say you're driving me nuts, like it's your fault. You're the reason I feel this way. And in reality, we need to own how we're feeling these moments. And so we need to say like, I'm feeling stressed out. I'm really noticing a need to take a break right now. And so you own it. Like these are my needs. I need this, and I'm going to take care of myself. I'm not looking for someone else to take responsibility for my feelings. So you have to really, it takes a little bit of time. I think breaking in those moments when you're about to like have a meltdown, leave. You don't need to stay. There's no reason to stay and have like blow ups with people. So take a walk, exit, go upstairs, go into a bathroom and shut the door, wherever you need to be, get the feelings out. So vent. I went for a run the other day. I ran to the edge. I'm in Cape Cod. I ran to a beach and I just screamed like living hell. Like I was and like, it was liberating. I was like, I needed that. And I ran back and I was like, okay, let's do this. I'm like ready to return to, we can talk about the issues. So I think it's important to say I instead of you. And I also think remember to use and instead of but, right? So, let's say you're living with your roommate and you're like, I really love living with you, but if you don't clean up your dirty dishes again, I'm going to lose it. We could say, look, I really love living with you. And I also noticed that I've been cleaning up all the dishes lately, and I would really love if you would help me out with that.
Wow. That's incredibly helpful. I'm gonna tell my dog that.
Yeah, you tell Ziggy.
All the dishes. I have one more question for you, though, actually along those lines. So do you have any advice too I know we didn't talk about this before, but for people who live alone and like are experiencing a new wave of loneliness, I think that just they're not used to. And I know like there's only so much Zoom and FaceTime stuff you can do, but any like thoughts of like connection or like what do you think?
Yeah, well, first it's really hard, and we have to remember that some people, I don't know, I saw, this reminds me of, for people who aren't used to it, like I think it's really, really intense. But it reminded me that there was an adopt a grandparent program. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I just saw about it. So awesome.
Yeah, but not everyone is a grandparent, and there are plenty of young people who live alone, and are not used to kind of not having social contact, and it's a really big deal.
I saw a funny meme that's like, seriously, check in on your extrovert friends, you guys.
I know. Yes.
And I mean, I feel that luckily I do have like some actual social interactions, but it's such a change too. As someone,
no.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's really important. So outside of having, obviously like virtual happy hours and that kind of thing, and making sure that your schedule is set up in that way, maybe it's even like kind of videotaping yourself. I know this sounds interesting and a little bit strange, but I've noticed in yoga therapy that when you're practicing alone, it's harder, right? So when you're by yourself, there's a sense of being seen that's really important. And so sometimes when you can't be seen, recording yourself is a way of sort of keeping yourself like feeling like there's someone else there listening and watching. So even if you're going to like cook dinner or something, you film yourself, and maybe it becomes a cooking show, or maybe you're just cooking like regularly, but like there's something about the act of being recorded that makes you feel like you are in relation to something else other than yourself, something outside of you.
That's really interesting. I actually, like, similarly, of course, like we do lots of Zoom happy hours or Zoom brunches and things like that. But I did a class recently because like doing classes at home is just not working for me. But it was one where the teacher could actually see you, and that from an accountability standpoint changed my entire experience of it.
Oh yeah, live classes. So my brother-in-law's girlfriend, she works for 305 Fitness, and she's doing these like live dance classes everywhere, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so amazing. But if I did it by myself, I'd be like, yeah, 1 2, I'm like, all right, I'm done.
And for a snack. That's
well, and also, you said something before we started recording this call, how you did and I hope you don't mind me like sharing this, but I think it's such a great idea, how your neighbor and you guys have a porch that's like patios that are adjacent, and so you can socially distance, have like a drink together or a cup of coffee on your patios. And I think even, yes, it's not doesn't mean she's over at your house, but that is human interaction, and that I feel like that is as close as we're going to get to the real thing.
It's like thinking outside the box a little bit too, of like, and this was a friend that I met through quarantine. So it's like it is a little silver lining for me for sure. Okay, this is so helpful. Do you have anything else that you think that like you were thinking about that would be helpful for people? We've covered a whole lot.
I think that the number one thing is just to try as much as you can to be compassionate with yourself. It's pretty trite, right? Everyone is saying that, but it is important in those moments when you start to feel like you're losing it. Remember that you're not losing it, Corona is. And so even if you have to say like F Corona, or remind yourself or your roommates, or just saying like, look, this isn't me, or I'm at I'm really stressed or really heightened spot right now. And so either you say that to yourself and give yourself a little forgiveness, or saying it to someone else and apologize, right? We all, I think, should be a little bit easier on each other, quicker to apologize, quicker to accept that we're not maybe at our best right now. I think that kind of compassion can go a long way.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's something I've been seeing a lot of people are just really short-tempered or responding to things in emails in ways that might not feel like them. And so just taking a step back and being like, okay, they're like in it too. And like you said at the very beginning, like therapists are experiencing this also.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's like there is this collective, at least, experience in some ways, but also just being compassionate with yourself and with the people around you.
Yeah. Maybe we should end the call with like a breath. Just
Good.
like, we should like a collective exhale. Okay, so let's inhale to a count of 4 and then just exhale to a count of 6 out of your mouth. So inhale to your nose, pause, and then exhale out. Whew. Yeah.
And this is why Kaylee is my best friend.
I
It's so helpful, and I think it's just such good tools that you mentioned. So yeah, make sure that you guys follow Kaylee at Yoga Psychotherapy. BK Yoga Psychotherapy. I don't know why that's
right. I'm not very good at posting. It's but absolutely feel free to join me there, and otherwise hopefully I'll meet some people in person when I'm off maternity leave.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm sending you and everybody who's watching and all of your peeps a lot of love and a lot of wellness.
You too. Back at ya. All right. Love ya.
Love you too.